End of the lesson, the students are expected to introduce the concepts of laws of motion, explain the law of inertia, describe the relationship between mass and inertia, explain the law of acceleration, and solve problems about laws of acceleration. So our first topic for today's asynchronous activity is the first law of motion, which is known as the law of inertia. Before we continue discussing the law of inertia, I want you to watch the short simulation video that I have here.
Okay, so in this short simulation activity, we have here two setups. So the setup on the left, which have a spring connected to a red ball, and the setup to the right, which we have a spring connected to a blue ball. Now, I want you to observe the movement of the spring. Okay, again, I want you to observe the movement of the spring. Yan. So now you could already see the movement of the spring. Now, let's change the setup. Okay? So I'll be increasing the mass of the ball on the left, also with the ball on the right. So I'll be giving them the maximum value of mass. Now I want you to observe the movement of the spring as we move it. Okay. So yan, so you can see it now, the movement of the spring. Now that the mass of the ball attached to the spring were increased.
Okay, so let's try to process the simulation activity by answering these two guide questions. So number 1, what two properties are being related with the simulation? Correct. So the two properties that are being related to simulation is the mass of the ball attached to the spring and the movement of the spring. Okay, so we have the mass of the spring, the mass of the ball attached to the spring and the movement of the spring. Number 2, based on the simulation, what do you think are their relationship? Correct. So based from the simulation activity, we have seen that the amount of mass attached to the spring affects the movement of the spring itself. So let's try to write it down here. So let's have here an arrow pointing up means high mass, and an arrow pointing down means low mass. So we have here low mass. So now let's try to relate the mass of the ball attached to the spring and its effect to the movement of the spring itself. So as we have seen in the first setup, in the simulation activity, if the mass of the ball is low, so low mass, how will you describe the movement of the spring? Correct. So when there is low mass attached to the spring, the movement of the spring is fast. So let's write down here, fast movement of spring. On the other way around, we have seen that when we set the mass of the ball attached to the spring to the maximum, so meaning high mass, we have seen that the movement of the spring becomes slow. So we have here slow movement of spring. Okay, so we have the slow movement of the string. So by the simulation activity that you had watched a while ago, we could now relate, or it gives us an idea of what mass and movement of the springs relation to one another. So that will be our focus for today. We will try to observe, or we will try to explain how mass and the movement of an object is related to one another, and what are the factors that affects the occurrences of such phenomenon. So the first question that we need to answer is, what is inertia? Since the first law of motion is known as the law of inertia, we have here the term inertia. So what is it? So when we are talking about inertia, it is a property of an object to resist any change it's in state of motion. So our keyword here, class, is resist any change in its state in motion. So pag sinabi nating resist, nilalabanan niya, or it prevents the object, inertia prevents the object to change its inertia prevents the object to change its state of motion. So let's say for example, moving object. Okay, so let's say we have here a moving object. What will the inertia dictate to the moving object? The inertia will make the moving object to continuously move. Yan. So it will become still moving object due to inertia. On the other way around, if an object at rest, so meaning the object is not moving, because of inertia, the object that is said to be at rest will continue or will remain to be at rest. So it will continue to be object at rest. And that is also because of inertia. So that is the general idea behind inertia. If something is moving, inertia will keep that something or that object to move. Or if an object is at rest, inertia will keep that object to be at rest. Okay, so that is inertia. Now, talking about the law of inertia, the law tells to us that, let me just erase this one. Okay, so the law tells to us that a body at rest will remain at rest and a body at motion will remain at motion unless acted upon by an external net force. So let's try to dissect the meaning or the statement of the law of inertia. So first one, let's use different colored highlighters here. So for the first one, a body at rest will remain at rest. This is what we have seen a while ago. So if the object is not moving or it is said to be at rest, inertia will keep that object to be at rest. It will not move because of inertia. Okay? On the other way around, if an object is said to be in motion, a body in motion will remain at motion unless acted upon by an external net force. So, the body will continue to move. Okay? So, it will move because of its inertia. So, the inertia will keep the object to be moving. It will not stop. Okay? So, that's the idea between the law of inertia. Now, the question is this. Let's say, for example, I have here this object. Okay? So, let's say I have here an object at rest. So, let's say I have here an object at rest. Let me draw another one. Okay? So, let's say we have here an object at rest. And then, because of its inertia, what will be the effect of inertia on its state of motion? So you are right, it will continue to be at rest. Okay? Now, what if, sir, I want to make this object at rest to move? What do we need to do for it to move? Okay, to change its state of motion. So according to the law of inertia, we need to exert an external net force. Ayan. So there should be an external net force. So in short, a force should be exerted to the object for it to move. So going back in our example here, so we have here an object at rest. Okay, so let me just go back. Ayan, this one. We have here an object at rest. Because of its inertia, it will remain at rest. So what if we want to make this object to move? So all we need to do is to exert force. Okay, so we need to exert a force. So because of this force, and provided that the force we exerted on the object is greater than the inertia, the object will now continue to move. It will now continue to move because of this force. Okay? So that is the idea between the law of inertia. Again, a body at rest will remain at rest, meaning an object will continue to be at rest. Okay? It will not move. Or, a body at motion will remain in motion a body that is moving will continue to move unless, okay, we can only change their state of motion if we will exert an external net force. Okay? So that is the law of inertia. Now, inertia is related to the quantity mass. Okay? So, inertia is related to the quantity which is known as mass. So, pag sinabi po nating mass, mass means bigat. Okay? Bigat ng isang bagay. So, how mass and inertia are related to one another? So, I have here this illustration. Ayan, mass and inertia. So, which would require more force to move or slow down? And the question is, why? So, I have here this two objects. So, on the left, we have here a bowling ball. And on the right, we have here a tennis ball. So, sino po kaya dito yung mas nangangailangan? It will require more force to move when it is at rest, kung gusto natin siyang pagalawin. At sino naman dito yung mangangailangan ng force na mas malakas pag siya naman ay umiikot tapos gusto natin siyang i-stop? And why? Okay? You are correct. So basically, the bowling ball, let's try to analyze their description. So the bowling ball here, class, as we all know, it has high mass. So pag sinabi nating high mass, mataas yung kanyang mass, meaning it is heavy. Okay? It is heavy. And then, the tennis ball here, class, have low mass. So, meaning, it is light. Magaang lang siya. So, between the two objects, we will require more force to move a bowling ball at rest. Okay? Because high mass means high inertia. High mass means high inertia, and low mass means the object have low inertia as well. Okay? So, high mass, high inertia. So, therefore, we need to exert more force. And then, we need to exert more force. And for the tennis ball, we need to exert lesser force for it to move or to stop. So, that is the relationship between mass and inertia. So, their relationship is said to be directly proportional to one another. Yan. So, their relationship is directly proportional. So, when we say directly proportional, if one goes up, the other one also goes up. And when the other value goes down, the other value will go down as well. So, in this case, mass and inertia, if the mass is high, the inertia would also be high. That is the relationship. So, ibig sabihin yung mga mabibigat na bagay, malaki yung kanilang inertia. So, kailangan natin ng greater force na sila ay pagalawin or pahintuin if ever they are moving. On the other way around, if the mass is low, mababa yung low, directly proportional, so si inertia ay low din. So, we have here low inertia as well. So, that's why yung mga magagaang na bagay, mababa ang inertia nila, so mas madali po silang pagalawin at mas madali silang pahintuin. So, that is the relationship between mass and inertia. Again, mass and inertia are directly proportional to one another. Now, so, ayan. So, we have here this answer. So, the bowling ball, because it has more mass, therefore, more inertia. So, this is what I'm telling you, the relationship between mass and inertia. Okay? Now, let's continue with some simulation. So, saan ba natin nakikita yung law of inertia? So, one common example of law of inertia applied into daily life is when we are riding elevator. So, I want you to watch this simulation video.
Okay, so one common scenario in which the law of inertia is applied in our daily life is when we are riding an elevator. So in this simulation activity, as you can see, we have here an elevator, okay, this one, and then we have here a passenger. So what I want you to observe is the movement or the tendency of the body of the passenger as the elevator moves up or down. So let's start moving the elevator up. Okay, so I want you to observe it now. And then, so as the elevator is moving up, and then suddenly it stops, what happens to the body? Okay, so it becomes momentarily, the body inside the elevator becomes a bit in the state of imbalance. Why? Because of the law of inertia. The body of the person inside the elevator tries to maintain its initial state of motion, which is moving upward. So when the elevator stops, the body tends to still move upward momentarily. Okay? So by the moment that the elevator stops, the body still continues to move upward. Now, let's try to observe the body when the elevator is going downward. Okay? And then, as you could see, the elevator is moving down and then suddenly the elevator stops. Okay. So, the similar thing happens to the body inside the elevator. So, when the elevator stops, the body of the passenger inside the elevator tries to maintain its initial state of motion, which is going downward. So, when the elevator stops moving, the body continues to move downward, and that's the reason why the body looks a bit in a state of imbalance. So that's how law of inertia is applied in elevators.
Okay. So now let's continue with some recap of what we had discussed about the law of inertia as of now. So the first law of motion states that an object at rest stays at blank and an object in motion will stay in blank with the same speed and direction unless acted upon by an blank force. So let's start with the first blank here, number 1. So what is the missing term? Correct. An object at rest stays at rest. Okay? And an object in motion stays in, what do you think is the answer in number 2? Correct. So the answer is in motion. So this is what we are telling a while ago. The object will remain at rest because of inertia, and an object in motion will remain in motion. It will not stop, or an object at rest will not move because of inertia. Okay? So, let's continue with the same speed and direction unless acted upon by, what is number 3? Correct. So, we have here external net force. So, for a moving object to stop, okay, or to overcome its inertia, we need to exert an external net force. Or, if an object is at rest and we want it to move, we should also exert an external net force greater to the inertia to change its state of motion. Let's continue. Okay, so Isaac Newton related the concept of inertia to mass. So he believed mass is a measure of inertia, which means more blank means more blank. So let's start with the first one. More. Correct. More mass means more. Correct. More inertia. So this is what we are telling a while ago, that the relationship of mass and inertia are directly proportional to one another. High mass, high inertia, and on the other way around, if the mass is low, the inertia is also low. Okay? So let's try to answer some questions about how you understand the law of inertia. So imagine a place in the cosmos far from all gravitational and frictional influences. Suppose that you visit that place, just suppose, and throw a rock. The rock will, as you can see, let's say the person here in the illustration is on outer space. It's not on Earth, so it's on outer space. And in that place, there is no gravitational, okay, there is no gravitational force, and there is no frictional force as well. Now, what do you think will happen to the rock here that is thrown by the astronaut. Ano kayang mangyayari dun sa tinapon niyang bato? Dun sa outer space na walang gravitational and frictional influences. Will it gradually stop or it will continue in motion in the same direction at constant speed? Your answer? You are correct. The answer is the rock will continue in motion in the same direction at constant speed. Bakit? Because of inertia. Ayan. So, once the astronaut throws the rock forward, it will continue to move forward. Okay? It will continue to move forward. It will never stop. Okay? Because there is no gravity and frictional force in that particular area. So, the inertia of the rock will make it to move forward continuously. It will not stop. Okay? Now, the question is, paano natin mapapatigil yung bato na tinapon ng astronaut if we want to stop it? Correct. You should apply external net force that is greater to the inertia of the rock. Ayan. So, we should exert an external net force that is greater to the inertia of the rock so that the rock will stop. Okay? So, next question. Ayan. A 2 kilogram object is moving horizontally with a speed of 4 meters per second. How much net force is required to keep the object moving at this speed and in this direction, provided that there is no gravity again? So we will consider the force of gravity negligible as well as the frictional force negligible. Ilang force kaya? Or gaano kayang kalaki yung force na kailangan para i-keep yung object na 2 kilograms to move with a speed of 4 meters per second? You are correct. So, if we will consider the law of inertia, the amount of force that we need to exert is 0 newtons. So, 0. Okay? So, we need to exert 0 newtons. Why? Because if the object is set into motion, it will continue to be in motion. Hindi po siya hihinto. And that is because, again, of inertia. So, hindi natin kailangan mag-exert ng force doon kasi tuloy-tuloy siya na mag-move because of inertia. Okay? And then, ayan. So, at this point, we will continue with the second law of motion, which is the law of acceleration. Now, before we continue with the law of acceleration, I have here these questions. So, which do you think is easier to push? So, I have here 2 shopping carts. So, we have here shopping cart A and shopping cart B. So, let's try to identify first their masses. Let's describe their mass. So, for shopping cart A, as you can see, it has more load. It contains more grocery items. So, therefore, its mass is high. On the other way around, grocery cart B have fewer grocery items. So, the mass is said to be low. Okay. So, now, let's go back to the question. Which do you think is easier to push? Sino yung mas madaling itulak? You are correct. So, between cart A and cart B, cart letter B is easier to push. So, let's put it here. Easier to push. Ayan. So, cart letter B is easier to push because it has low mass. No, mababa lang yung kanyang mass, therefore mababa yung inertia, mas madali po natin siyang mapapakilos. Magaang lang siya so mas madali siyang mapakilos as compared with A na mabigat. Now, second question, which do you think will move faster when pushed? So, sino kaya yung mas mabilis tatakbo provided that we exerted the same amount of force in pushing them? You are correct again. So, cart letter B will move faster as compared with cart letter A. So, mas mabilis na mag-move si cart letter B because of its mass. Mas magaang siya diba? So, kung sino yung mas magaang, mas madali siyang itulak, and at the same time, mas mabilis siyang kumilos. So, in our next lesson, we will try to relate the relationship of mass, acceleration, okay, and mass, acceleration, and then the force exerted on a given object. So our topic is about the law of acceleration, which is the second law of motion by Isaac Newton. So the second law of motion is known as the law of acceleration, which states that the acceleration of an object as produced by a net force is directly proportional to the magnitude of the net force in the same direction as the net force and inversely proportional to the mass of the object. So let's try to dissect, or let's try to analyze that statement of the law of acceleration. So this statement here, class, acceleration of an object as produced by a net force is directly proportional to the magnitude of the net force. So this statement here, class, relates mass and acceleration. Okay. So mass and acceleration relationship. So according to the law of acceleration, mass and acceleration, it's not mass and acceleration. So we have here force and acceleration. Okay. So we have here force and acceleration. So according to the law of acceleration, what is the relationship? The relationship is said to be, again, directly proportional to one another. So if we will try to interpret that directly proportional, if the force is high, if the force that we exerted on the object is high, its acceleration will be also high. High acceleration. Okay? Or, on the other way around, if the force that we exert on an object is low, the acceleration of that object would also be low. Okay, so that is directly proportional. So force and acceleration are directly proportional to one another. High force, high acceleration; low force, low acceleration. So take note, class, when we mean acceleration here, class, yung bilis ng kanyang pagkilos. So dito, faster; dito, slow ang kanyang movement. Okay? So, going back to the PowerPoint, so simply put, the more force you exert, ayan, so mas puwersado, mas malaki yung force na in-exert natin, the faster it will move. Okay? So, the faster the object will move. So, example, I have here a ball, okay, which is 3 kilograms, and then another one here, the same ball, which is also 3 kilograms. Now, let's say this is setup A, and this is setup B. So, in setup A, let's say we kick the ball with 10 newtons. Okay? And then, in setup B, we kick the ball with just 3 newtons. Now, my question, in which setup? Sa letter A ba or sa letter B? Saang setup mas mabilis magmo-move yung bola? In A or in B? Correct. So, yung bola po ay mas magmo-move ng mas mabilis dito po sa ating situation letter A. Bakit? Because we exerted higher force, and when there is higher force, the acceleration will also be higher. So, mas mabilis yung kanyang pag-move or yung kanyang pag-accelerate. Now, let's continue. So, the second statement is this: the acceleration of an object as produced by the net force is inversely proportional to the mass of the object. So this time, we are trying to relate the the acceleration and mass. Okay? So we are now trying to relate acceleration and mass. So what's the relationship? So simply put, the heavier the object, the slower it moves. So their relationship is said to be inverse. So ayan, we have here the term inversely proportional. And when we say inversely proportional, one value goes up and the other one goes down. On the other way around, if one of the value goes down, the other one goes up. So that is what we mean by inversely proportional to one another. So if the acceleration is high, or let's start with mass. Let's say we have here high mass. Okay, mataas yung mass niya. What will happen to its acceleration? Correct. Because it's inversely proportional, the acceleration would be low. So, low acceleration. On the other way around, ayan o, tignan, high and low. On the other way around, if the mass of the object is low, ibig sabihin magaang. How about its acceleration? Again, your clue is inversely proportional. Correct. So the acceleration now would be high. High ang kanyang acceleration. So low becomes low mass, high acceleration. That's why they are inversely proportional with one another. Okay? So that is the law of acceleration. Now, I want you to think of this. If we push a car and a truck with the same force, which among the two will move faster and why? So let's say I have here the car. Okay, so I have here the car and then I have here the truck. Let's say this is the truck. Now, let's say we push both of this using 100 Newton force. 100 Newton force. So, which do you think will move fast? Sino yung mas mabilis na gagalaw? Yung car ba or yung truck? You are correct. The one that will move faster in this scenario would be the car. Okay? So, the car would move faster as compared to the truck. Now, why? Bakit kaya mas mabilis mag-move yung car as compared to the truck? Provided that we exerted the same amount of force. Correct. Because car have less mass. Okay? Less ang kanyang mass. Ayan, less mass means high acceleration. Ayan, less mass, high acceleration. And here, high ang kanyang mass, mas mabigat siya. So, therefore, ang kanyang acceleration would be low. Mabagal lang yung kanyang paggalaw. Okay? Now, next. Why do fat guys tends to get easily tired when jogging as compared with thinner guy? Bakit daw mas mabilis mapagod yung matataba kaysa sa mapapayat when they are jogging? You are correct. Simply because of their mass. No? Yung mass kasi nung matataba, fat guys have heavier mass or they have greater mass. So they tend to exert more force to run. So in doing that, their muscles are exerting more force to run. They will get easily tired. On the other way around, thinner guy have less mass. Fat guys, sulat natin dito more mass or high mass. And then the thinner guy have low mass. So because of that, if the fat guys have high mass, they will need to exert more force to move. They will need more force to move. So because of needing more force to move, mas madali silang mapapagod. Hindi katulad ng thinner guys, they just need to exert less force. Okay? They need to exert less force to move. So therefore, they will not get easily tired. Kasi onti lang yung force na ine-exert nila to make their body move. Okay? Ayan. So now at this point, we will try to answer problems about law of acceleration. So I have here some notes before we continue with the law, with problem solving about the law of acceleration. Number 1, we will be answering the problems in a step-by-step process in which you need to So you're given first the unknown. You need to show the unknown, the formula to be used, given unknown formula, solution, and then final answer. Final answer with correct unit and inside a box. Ayan. So, ayan na. Dapat meron kayong given, unknown, formula, solution, and final answer with correct unit and inside the box. So, the second law of motion, which is the law of acceleration, can be translated into an equation, which is F is equal to ma. F is equal to ma. So, F here, class, where F is force, F is force, and the unit is Newton. Let me just erase this one. F is force, and the unit is Newton. M is our mass, the unit is kilogram, and A is acceleration, and the unit is meter per second squared. Okay? So, this formula can be put in our formula pyramid. Ayan. So, ito yung formula pyramid natin. So, this is our formula pyramid in which we will put F here on the top, and then we have here A, or we have here M, and then we have here A. So, anong gagawin natin? Now, referring to our formula pyramid, if we are asked to look for the value of force, let's write down their operations. So, we have here multiply, and then here we have divide on both area or on the both sides. Yan. So, here, divide, and then divide. Okay. So, let's continue. So, if we are looking for force, you cover letter F, and you can see mass times acceleration. So, this is our formula number 1. Okay? If force is unknown, pag nawawala yung force. Now, what if mass is unknown? You cover letter M. So, the formula will become M is equal to F over A. So, this is the formula if we will be asked to find for the value of mass. And if the acceleration is unknown, you cover letter A, anong nakikita? F divided by M. So, this will be the formula for finding the acceleration. So, we have here 3 formula. So, if the force is unknown, mass times acceleration. If the mass is unknown, force divided by acceleration. And if the acceleration is unknown, force divided by mass. So, let's try to answer some sample problems. Yeah, number 1. What is the acceleration of the ball with a mass of 0.5 kilogram when kicked with a force of 10 Newton? So, the first thing that we need to do is to identify the given. So, what are the given in the following problem? So, first is we have here 0.5. You write down here force, and then mass, M, and then acceleration. So, based from the problem, what is the value of mass? Letter M. So, you are correct. So, we have 0.5 kilogram. How about the value of force? Value of force. So, we have here 10 newtons. Now, what is the value of acceleration? So, there is no value of acceleration presented on the problem. So, we are done with step number 1. You just need to identify the given. So, let's proceed with step number 2. You write down the unknown. Ano yung nawawala? So, based from our given, ano yung may question mark? The unknown is acceleration. Ayan. So, the unknown is the acceleration. Next, what will be our working formula? So, let's go back. Ang nawawala ay si acceleration. Balikan natin to. Formula 1, Formula 2, and then Formula 3. Sino dyan yung which formula will be needed to use if the acceleration is missing? Ito. So, we will go on with formula number 3. So, isulat lang doon, A is equal to F divided by M. So, that is formula. And we're done with the formula step. Now, let's continue with the solution. So, in the solution part, we just need to substitute the value of each quantities. So, the value of force is 10 newtons. And then, divided by the value of mass is 0.5 kilograms. Ayan. Now, before we continue with the mathematical operation, take note class here, ayan, that 1 newton is equal to it should be letter N. Ayan, 1 Newton is equal to 1 kilogram meter per second squared. Ayan. So, we will change it. So, we will change Newton to 1 kilogram meter per second squared. So, sulat natin dito. 10 kilogram meter per second squared divided by 0.5 kilograms. Ayan. So, now, let's try to let's divide it using our calculators. Let's just skip it. Okay. So, using the calculators, 10 divided by 0.5, the answer is 20. Let's write down there 20. So, we have 20 yung sagot. Ano ang unit niya? Take a look. This is kilogram and kilogram. So, we will cancel each other. So, anong natirang unit? Is 1 meter per second squared. So, the final answer is 20 meters per second squared. Okay? Now, next, let's continue with sample problem number 2. What is the mass of the crate when it moves with an acceleration of 1.5 meters per second squared after applying a force of 8 newtons? So, let's identify again the given. So, let's start with the given. Write F, M, and A. So, let's start with force. So, this is our force. So, force is 8 newtons. And then, acceleration is this. Acceleration of 1.5 meters per second squared. So, our mass is unknown. So, siya yung question mark. So, step number 2, let's write down here the unknown. Ano yung nawawala based from the given that we had? So, ang nawawala po ay si mass. So, kung babalikan natin yung formula kanina dun sa ating formula triangle, okay, so ang nawawala ay si M. Ayan. So, number 1, number 2, or number 3. Anong gagamitin natin? Correct. We will use number 2, formula number 2, because we have here M. So, M is equal to force divided by acceleration. So, M is equal to force divided by acceleration. So, that's it for the formula part. And then, let's continue with the solution. So, for the solution, substitution method, M is equal to, what's the value of force? 8 newtons. And then, value of acceleration, we have 1.5 meters per second squared. So again, we have here newtons, and as we have seen from the previous problem, 1 newton is equal to 1 kilogram meter per second squared. So we will turn newton into kilogram meter per second squared so that we could cancel units. So mass is equal to 8 kilogram meter per second squared divided by 1.5 meters per second squared. So using our calculators, okay, tignan nga natin using the calculators. So 8 divided by 1.5, ay mali. Let's repeat. 8 divided by 1.5, the answer is 5.33. Okay. So the answer would be 5.33. So what would be the unit? So let's take a look. Ano yung mga cancel? So meter per second squared and meter per second squared. So ang natira na lang ay kilograms. So our final answer is 5.33 kilograms. Okay? And then last, ayan. So last problem, if a 0.8 kilogram ball moves with acceleration of 5 meters per second squared, what is the force exerted on the ball? So let's start with the given. Force, mass, and then acceleration. So 0.8 kilogram is the mass. And then 5 meters per second squared is our acceleration. Okay? And force is unknown based from the problem. So let's write down here the unknown. Alam na natin. The unknown is force. So the formula that we will use, so let's go back to the formula pyramid that we had on the previous slides. Ayan, so formula number 1, formula number 2, and formula number 3. So ano yung gagamiting formula pag nawawala si force? Formula number 1. F is equal to mass times acceleration. So let's write down here. F is equal to mass times acceleration. Okay, and then let's continue with the solution. Solution part. Substitution method. F is equal to M multiplied by A. So our value, the value of mass is 0.8. So we have here 0.8 kilogram multiply by the value of acceleration, which is 5 meters per second squared. Ayan. So we have 5 meters per second squared. So doing the mathematics, 0.8 times 5, the answer would be, using our calculators, so 5 times 0.8, the answer is 4. So we have here 4 kilogram meter per second squared. Ayun, yung kilogram and then meter per second squared. Or, di ba sabi natin, 1 newton is equal to 1 kilogram meter per second squared. So, therefore, ang sagot ay 4 newtons. So, that is our final answer. So, I hope you learned from this asynchronous video lesson. So, make sure that you watch this before going through the activities that you need to accomplish. Thank you, class.